Welcome, everyone! Based on the requests of higher-ups, today we will be exploring some simple object-oriented programming terms. This will help everyone with basic terminology and functions that will be implemented in the future. Be ready to take notes! Class is a blueprint of an object, its properties, behavior, and how it interacts with the exterior world. Classes are like object constructors for creating objects. The collection of objects is said to be a class. They are logical quantities and don't consume any space in the memory. Inheritance is a mechanism where you can derive a class from another class for a hierarchy of classes that share a set of attributes and methods. When an object or class is based on another object or class, using the same implementation, it is a mechanism for code reuse. The relationships of objects or classes through inheritance give rise to a hierarchy. Polymorphism is the definition of different executions of a method for different inputs and for different objects. It occurs when we have many classes related to each other by inheritance. Abstraction is the selection of only useful information about an object for a particular application. This helps in reducing programming complexity and effort. All models are abstractions since they reduce the complexity of an object into something that is understandable. Delegation is when you hand over the responsibility for a particular task to another class or method. Minimization is having the least functionality necessary in a program or device to decrease the number of ways in which attackers can exploit a program or device. Open design involves the making of both free and open source software as well as open source hardware. Classes, methods, or functions should be open for extension and closed for modification. We are going to use the term function instead of modularity, for that is what they are called in most of the predominant programming languages of today. Functions are important because they allow us to take large, complicated programs and divide them into smaller manageable pieces. We can concentrate on what we want it to do and test it to make sure it works properly. Program control is a function used to simply subdivide and control the program. These functions are unique to the program being written. Other programs may use similar functions, maybe even functions with the same name, but the content of the functions is almost always very different. Specific task functions are sometimes referred to as building blocks. Because they are already coded and tested, we can use them with confidence to write a large program. Now, let us cover some security terms. Encapsulation is the ability to control the access to the object's properties and methods, and render them either visible or hidden. Meaning, visible only to internal functions. Enclosing objects in a familiar interface in a way that makes them interchangeable and guards their states against invalid changes. The goal is to allow access or manipulation of the class data in only the methods the designer intended. A process is a program running on a computer. Isolating the process address space from other address spaces prevents tampering or interference from work by other processes. In a computer, domain separation refers to a collection of data or instructions that warrant protection. Outside of a computer, a domain can be an area of responsibility or control. Separating domains allows for the enforcement of rules governing the entry and use of domains by entities outside the domain. Layering slows down an attacker. The attacker needs to conquer each layer before moving on to the next. In the context of computer security, a layer is a separate level that must be conquered by an attacker to breach a system. Firewalls, intrusion detection systems, internal encryption, access control, and personnel controls are examples of layers typically employed to protect enterprise data and programs. In a computer, a privilege is a right for the user to act on managed computer resources. Minimizing the number of privileges granted to a user for accomplishing assigned duties improves accountability and limits accidental misuse. The operating system must also disable privileges when not required. With data hiding, the operating system implies access control to different regions of the stack. Websites don't need to load all a user's data to show a list of usernames, they only need the username, the rest of the record fields can be hidden. Finally, let us learn about object-oriented programming principles. The dependency inversion principle states that our classes should depend upon interfaces or abstract classes instead of concrete classes and functions. The high-level module must not depend on the low-level module. Open-close principle states that objects or entities should be open for extension but closed for modification. Meaning, The objects should be accessible for use, but the integrity of the object needs to remain intact. Single responsibility principle states that a class should have one and only one reason to change, meaning that a class should have only one job. The interface segregation principle states that a client should not implement an interface if it doesn't use it. This happens mostly when one interface contains more than one functionality, and the client only needs one functionality. I hope these terms help you navigate the OOP implementations. Thank you for your participation.